Okay, so this is the article, and it's reviewing a book called Post-Colonial Economies, written in 2011. The review article is from Tomasz Profant. And interesting, so post-colonial, so you can see actually was a trendy topic about 10 years ago of post-colonial theory starting to go into the field of economics, and thinking about contemporary efforts to rethink economy, which tend to be rooted empirically and theoretically in Western-centered conceptions. So if you go back to the definition of post-colonialism that we looked at from the Britannica article, it's important for us as historians not just to think about areas of the world and how this aligns with a so-called Western paradigm, but how these economies and politics and societies exist independently of a Western conception of them. And this is excellent as a book if you do manage to get your hands on it, because it has some really famous historians engaged in a debate. So Dipesh Chakrabarty, who's I think both a historian and also within economics, but he does a lot of work on world history and global development, histories of global development. And he looks at, Kenneth Pomeranz, The Great Divergence, China, Europe, and the Making of the Modern World Economy, which I read during my undergraduate studies and is also a really famous book. So this is great because, if you manage to get your hands on this or you read Chakrabarty's article, sometimes you can even get around having to buy the book itself by just looking up Chakrabarty and seeing whether he's published the chapter for free somewhere, maybe on his website or on like a website called academia.edu. But so it means you don't actually have to read a Pomeranz book itself. It means you could just read the Chakrabarty and see what comes from there. And I think what's particularly interesting about what Chakrabarty is saying is, for example, what does land mean for the Australian Aboriginals? So, how would someone measure economic growth? Does the term economic growth itself, within the question title, force us to think in a Western way? Or would, people in other previous time periods have said, oh, we are experiencing economic growth, even if it can't be measured by things like GDP? At what point does the historical subject, define economic growth in their own terms? And what's also very useful with these kinds of review articles is that they're going to, summarize what each chapter is saying. So it's much, much quicker to read than most other things. And you'll realize actually that not all of this is particularly relevant. And this is the problem with history as well. And this is something that you have to get used to. For every book that you read, maybe 90% of it won't be relevant and 10% will be directly relevant to what you're saying. But then you realize that actually not all of it is that useful. So you only end up using about 5% of a book, which is why it's really important to be reading review articles like this one in order to see in order to see how much time you should be spending on this. Yeah, have a look at this one. And for example, this is a really interesting idea that the culture economy dichotomy is a false one. Economic categories are Eurocentric. Um, yeah, really interesting. Have a look and see whether that speaks to you.